Good morning. Welcome back to the Red Mic. Happy Thursday. Glad you're here. Today's Red Mic message, well, it sort of reminds me of, there's a Shania Twain song where basically she's talking about all these different famous people and she says, that don't impress me much. Well, that's kind of where I am, and I think a lot of Gen X is when it comes to AI. Yeah, we use it. We're not afraid of it. We're not overly impressed. We love it. Don't get me wrong. I love what it does. But I think in the back of our heads, we're all convinced that this is not going to last. Something's going to be better. Something's going to make this obsolete. More about that in a minute. LinkedIn just published its first AI confidence survey, and the headline, honestly, the headline didn't surprise me or I think anybody paying attention. It said that Gen X is the most confident generation when it comes to AI, while Gen Z, the so-called digital natives, they're the least confident, which I thought was, both interesting and sad. Executives apparently are, bullish, and adoption is accelerating, and job seekers are using AI to rewrite resumes, prep for interviews, analyze job postings, create agents to do stuff behind the scenes. But this generation that grew up with smartphones in their hands almost from the time they were born, they feel the least supported, the least optimistic, and the most unsure that AI will actually help them get ahead. LinkedIn is trying to treat this as a paradox. It's not. Pardon my French, but this is a no shit Sherlock moment. The article talks about the truth without actually saying this is the truth. Gen X is not confident in AI because we're dazzled by it. We're confident because we've already survived multiple versions of tech failing us. We didn't grow up with technology as magic. We grew up with technology as unreliable. We moved from 45s to 8 tracks to cassettes to CDs to MP3s to streaming, you name it, rabbit ears to cable to VHS and Betamax to DVDs and Blu-ray, and Blu-ray also became streaming. We went from DOS to Windows, from Atari to Amiga to consoles that needed patches on day one. Thank you, Windows 11. We learned early that every revolutionary technology eventually breaks, mutates, or gets replaced. So when AI shows up, Gen X doesn't see a god or a monster. We see another tool, one that will be overhyped, underdocumented, misused by leadership, and eventually stabilized by the people actually doing the work, and eventually replaced with upgrades that hopefully work better. That is our lived experience, and I think that matters. Now, where Gen Z's skepticism makes sense, even though honestly LinkedIn did not frame it properly. Gen Z didn't grow up learning systems. They grew up inside finished systems. They, from day one, had apps that just worked until they don't. Algorithms that decide outcomes without explanation, rules enforced by invisible moderation, authority that is abstract, automated, and unchallengeable. So when Gen X enters the chat, Gen Z doesn't see leverage, they see replacement without recourse. And honestly, that fear is not irrational. I mean, because unlike Gen X, Gen Z, they don't have that institutional memory to fall back on. They don't have resume scars from past tech collapses. Oh no, my computer crashed and ate my entire paper. Documents update regularly now. Especially if you're using something like Google Docs, it saves as you go. How revolutionary. Raise your hand. You were working on a paper all night long and then your computer ate it and you had to start over and you end up going to bed at 3 o'clock instead of midnight. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bob. I digress. Uh, Gen Z, they don't yet trust that, they don't believe that this will break eventually. To them, AI seems final. To Gen X, it seems familiar. I mean, it's a different verse to the same song. And this is the part I think where executives are lying to themselves about all of it. That confidence gap that they talk about between executives and workers is an optimism I think it's abdication, because when leaders say employees will learn AI, what they mean is employees will absorb the risk while we absorb the efficiency. Gen Z or Gen Xers, we hear that and we're like, okay, we've been here before. Gen X hears that and they freeze because this is their entry point. This is not their fourth reinvention. Here's the cultural part that LinkedIn completely skipped and glossed over. Gen X has feelings. We just don't organize our lives around them. We came of age before every discomfort was treated as damage, and we didn't have safe spaces. Every disagreement was not harm to us. We learned early that the world doesn't rearrange itself around your inner life. You have to adapt to it. That's not cruelty, that's calibration. So when AI shows up, Gen X doesn't ask, well, does this affirm me? Does this validate me? Does this make me uncomfortable? We ask, does it work? Can I bend it to my advantage? What breaks when leadership screws this up? I mean, we are waterfall in an agile world. Think about that if you know what I'm talking about. A lot of Gen Z anxiety around AI isn't really about the technology, I think. It's about growing up in a culture where emotional safety replaced practical resilience and where institutions promise guardrails, warnings, and moral referees everywhere. These kids grew up in a bowling alley with the tubes in the gutter. No, let the ball go in the gutter. That's part of the game. Gen X, we didn't get that luxury. We were raised on figure it out. Oh, you burned your hand? Well, maybe you won't touch the stove again. Here's the one that today's kids just don't understand. We were told, go outside, play in ditches, playgrounds with slides, the temperature of the sun, and oh yeah, don't come back until the street lights come on. We were raised on hose water, neglect, and bikes without helmets. So when the modern workplace drowns itself in its woke jargon, its feelings first management, and endless language policing, Gen X, we tune it out. Not because we lack empathy, but because performative concern doesn't fix broken systems. AI doesn't want to know your pronouns. Markets don't pause for your anxiety, and systems and facts don't care about feelings, and they shouldn't. Gen X, we know this instinctively because we've lived through enough cycles. We've lived through enough cycles to learn that competence always outlasts comfort signaling. Confidence doesn't come from being digitally native. It comes from having survived digital and analog extinction events. Gen X knows that tools change, titles evaporate, skills migrate, leadership panics, usually really late. And we, we know this cold. The people who understand systems always outlast the people who worship tools. And that's why Gen X engages more, not because we trust AI, not because we trust the executives who have rolled it out, and definitely not because we buy the corporate BS. We learned the hard way. If you don't pick up the tool, someone else will, and they won't ask if you're comfortable first. We have feelings. We just don't let them slow us down. Not in life, not in AI, not in the office, none of it. So LinkedIn, pay more attention. Your story was painfully light. That's today's Red Mike message. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you'll give me a like, a follow, and a share. And if you see kids building a bike ramp out of rickety wood and bricks and stuff, don't go out there and tell them that that's unsafe. Don't do that. Let them. Let them get skinned up. They're wearing helmets, they'll be all right. Let them hurt themselves. Let them figure out, oh, well, if I put the bricks here, it's not very sturdy. Let them do stuff. Scraped knees are part of all of this. Don't be afraid to get your knees messed up. Okay? You're not living through this life without some pain, so go out there and enjoy it. Make the best of it. Find your inner Gen Xer, okay? You can do it. We did it. You can do it too. That's today's Red Mike message. I'll see you again tomorrow. I love you guys. Until next time, life is short. Drink the bourbon.